Hello, and welcome back to another episode of American Sports Broadcasters. Today, we're just going to be recapping our picks and seeing how we did. So, let's start with college football, Brian.
All right, well, let's start at one of the biggest games there was, the ACC championship game. There were a lot of questions going into this game. Can North Carolina keep their run going? Is Clemson really the undisputed number one in college football? The game ended pretty close, 45-37, with a very controversial call at the end on an offsides on the onside kick by North Carolina.
Yes, and to me, let's forget about this
Mhm.
onside penalty for a second.
Okay.
Clemson was up in this game several times by two or three possessions.
Mhm.
And they let North Carolina get back into it again and again and again. And we were watching three games
That's true.
at a time
That's true,
for this
yes.
one. And it was almost like just put Clemson on the back burner and just forget about it. They're up by so much, they're just going
Mhm.
to win. And then all of a sudden, I'd have to start paying attention again because they would just let them come back. And so I think if they're going to keep playing like that, I think they won't win the whole thing. They might win the first round of the playoffs, but they are not going to win the national championship if they continue to play like that.
Yeah, and that's definitely true. They let North Carolina come back, and I don't know what to contribute that with. I mean, North Carolina is definitely a good team. I say they're a team you have to worry about next year. But definitely it was an interesting game. Really showed Clemson's true colors.
Yeah.
And so definitely going to be a team, have to be a team to watch. So now we got to move on to the SEC championship game, and boy, this game got ugly towards the end. Alabama pulled away 29-15, and really it was just Florida didn't have any offense.
They did not have any offense. And we've seen it from a couple different teams, not just in college football this year, but
It's
in
true.
the NFL as well. If your defense, it doesn't matter how good your defense is, if they're on the field for 40 minutes,
Right.
they're going to get worn down, and that's exactly what happened in this game.
Right. Yeah. Florida's time of possession was only about 16 minutes. Their defense played great. They stopped Henry for most of the game until they got tired at the end, and that's huge. Now that he is a Heisman finalist, um, I don't know. I don't know what Florida team to really look at. It's hard to say. Florida these last couple of games, they scored their first offensive touchdown since November 21st in this game against Alabama.
They need their quarterback to wise up, basically. He was looking dumb. You know, he was not throwing it to open people. He was holding on to the football way too long. He got picked off a couple of times. He was making bad decisions the whole game. He actually had decent time for a lot of it. He was getting pretty good protection. Also, they couldn't run the football at all. I think the average yards per carry was probably right around 1.8 or so.
Mm-hmm.
It was just not good to watch offensively.
Yeah, it was definitely. But I don't know. I mean, it seems though if a team can stop Alabama's run game, you got a really good shot against Alabama.
You do, but their quarterback was still making some good
Yeah,
plays there.
he definitely still had a good game.
Yeah,
For sure.
he did.
So definitely going to be interesting in the college football playoff to see where Alabama goes. So now we're going to move on to the Big Ten game. Definitely a very fun game to watch. Very close game.
Oh, it was great.
The defenses were great on both sides. Offenses, maybe not so much. They definitely did play well, but the touchdowns didn't come until the end of the game.
Right, and we didn't really see the Michigan State offense that we've been seeing for the majority of the year. They've been putting up points in bunches for the majority of the season, and in this game, I don't know if it was the Iowa defense that was doing it. To me, it looked more like it was a lack of execution from the Michigan State offense. Personally, they were dropping balls. It looked like a couple of linemen were missing a block here and there, and so I think they just need to square that away, and I think they'll be all right.
Yeah, and like I said before this game, I said it's all going to be about the turnovers, and Iowa had 2, and Michigan State had 1, and Michigan State came out on top, 16-13. It was all about what team can make the other team make the mistakes, and it definitely proved to be what sealed the deal. And not only that, you can't let a team have a 9-minute run at the end of the game. You just can't.
Yeah, but they're also at the end of the game, Michigan State really kind of found their groove. And yes, you can't allow that, but it was kind of fun offense to watch where they were just like, here's what we're going to do, try and stop us.
Yeah, so definitely was interesting. It's going to be fun to see Michigan State, I think, play in the College Football Playoff. But definitely Iowa had a stellar year compared to years before. Definitely a team to watch, I think, next year.
Yeah, let's not take away from that completely unexpected season,
Right,
but just not quite there yet.
right. All right, now we're going to move on to the Pac-12 championship. Stanford USC. Stanford ran away with this game, 41-22, and I think really it was USC couldn't stop the run.
Yeah, I think they literally ran away with it.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times I was looking at that center TV. This was another one that we were watching the three at a time, and I would just see their running back take off for another 20-yard run.
Yeah.
It was crazy. It was fun to watch.
Definitely was. Stanford proved that they can beat USC again. They beat them early in the season, scoring 41 points, scored 41 again. Stanford proved, I think, that they're a consistent team. It's too bad that there isn't another spot in the playoff for them because I think they'd definitely be a team that could make some noise.
Which really, if they had gotten off to a stronger start to the year, they would definitely be in the playoffs, I think.
Definitely.
They just who did they lose to at the beginning? Was it Northwestern?
They lost to Northwestern, which isn't a bad loss, but the loss to Oregon is definitely not a good loss at all. So definitely, I think if they would have beat Oregon, we'd be having a different conversation about Stanford, and I think they would have been in the playoffs.
I think they would have done a pretty good job there too.
Definitely. All right, and then our other notable game of the week was the Big 12 game against Texas at Baylor. And like I called it, Texas ended up taking this one 23-17. Basically what it was is that Texas defense came out early, got multiple turnovers from Baylor, and the offense came out playing. And then at the end of the game, the offense could not do really anything until they necessarily had to let Baylor get back in this game. But Texas was able to end the season strong.
Yeah, but let's be real here. It's kind of hard for a team to win a game when they don't have a quarterback. They used, I think, 4 different quarterbacks at the end of the game, 2 receivers and a couple of running backs in there. And they were moving the ball pretty well that last drive. Thought they might have a chance to get back into it and maybe win the game there at the end. And I would have been actually really surprised at that point. But nah, this Texas defense did shut them down. They did a good job. But it is hard to win when you don't have a quarterback.
That's true, but my philosophy is your defense wins games, and Baylor has struggled on defense all year, and it showed. Texas offense has not been really good this year. Texas also had their fair share of injuries on both sides of the ball. We were actually on our second string quarterback who started the year first string and then was demoted, and so it was big for him to come out and play a good game. They were able to dice up the defense until the second half. And really it just took that they were able to get a couple field goals in to really seal the deal.
And now I think it's still a possibility Texas might get a bowl game, right?
Not anymore. The bowls have been decided. I believe only 3 5-7 teams made it because some teams were able to go 6-6. Texas was about number 6 in that chance there. So unfortunately, it didn't. But I think it's definitely good for Texas. Went 2-0 against AP top 25 teams, went 3-7 otherwise. I think it's good for recruits, and they're going to make some offensive coaching changes over the offseason. Right now, they're talking to Texas or TCU's offensive coordinator, and it sounds like it's a good chance that he'll be coming to Texas for next year, which will definitely help the offense a lot.
All right. One other team, it was a championship. It was not as big of a championship, but the Houston and Temple game, I gotta say, Houston, you really surprised me. I did not give you enough credit of how good you were. I thought it was mostly just all hype. I didn't respect your conference or your strength of schedule, but watching you play, you're a good team, Houston. You got great offensive linemen. You've also got you got a quarterback who is one of the fastest quarterbacks I've ever seen. You can throw the ball. You've got good running backs. You've got a defense that plays with a fire and intensity, and you have a bright future, Houston. So there's that.
Yeah, Houston has definitely proved themselves. They, after this conference game, the conference championship game, they signed their coach through 2020. That was a big deal. There was a lot of talk that he would be moving into some of these coaching vacancies. Big deal for Houston. I definitely think they'll be showing up these next couple of years. And who knows? Maybe they'll be one of the first teams to make the playoffs without being in one of the Power Five conferences. So definitely could be a big
fun
deal.
To watch.
Yes, definitely. They're a good team. I guess the way I feel about it, a lot of the Power Five teams I felt this year did not have good strength of schedule. So I think even if we consider their strength schedule not the best, I think they definitely could have pushed their case a little bit.
Yeah.
So yes, it'll be interesting. The college football playoff, as we said, has been set. You have number 1 Clemson, who will play number 4 Oklahoma first round, and then you'll have number 2 Alabama play number 3 Michigan State in their first round, and the winners of those two sides will play in the national championship game. Definitely going to be an interesting 4 teams to watch. And I'm really interested to watch that Alabama game. I think Michigan State can definitely rough them up a little bit,
We'll see, but we'll give you our official picks on Friday. So
yes,
you have to wait and see. All right, so in the NFL, we had a lot of really close games this week. 2 or 3 went into overtime, and a lot of special teams issues too. Surprising to see that. We're going to start off with a game that wasn't close. The Seattle Seahawks versus Minnesota Vikings. It won 38-7 Seahawks, and I'm sad to say I picked the Vikings in this one. There were a couple things that went wrong. I'm going to start off with a little disclaimer. The Vikings had a bunch of injuries, especially key ones on defense. Their linebacker that was going to be the spy on Russell Wilson got knocked out pretty early on, and then Russell Wilson, he just took off. You couldn't stop him on the ground, you couldn't stop him through the air, and the scoreboard shows. The Vikings, though, they had some opportunities on offense to get some stuff done, but their offensive line was not doing anything. Teddy Bridgewater got sacked 4 times, and he was getting hit a lot more than that.
And the other thing was that we got to look at. AP didn't play a lot. Maybe there was some injury there, but even when he was on the field, he wasn't making big plays, and I think that's also contributed to the offensive line not really being there.
And there were a few key injuries along that offensive line too. But still, Adrian Peterson, you have to play him. Mm-hmm. He is your go-to guy. He is the guy who right now this offense is built around, and it shows when he has 17 or more carries, they win the game. Mm-hmm. And he definitely did not get 17 carries in this game.
But I think in the first half he had 5 carries for 10 yards.
Yeah,
that's not going to win you games. If that's one of your star players, that's not going to be able to get be able to let you do play action and stuff like that. It's just not going to be there.
Minnesota offense never actually got to put up any points, as it was a kick return that managed to score him a touchdown. So there's one special teams issue. Clean that up, Seahawks, and you have a shutout.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. You can't blame the loss on referees. Seahawks were up big before this all started to happen, but there was definitely some bad officiating. I feel there were 5 penalties in a row on the Vikings, and a lot of them were not penalties at all. Were just basically throwing flags. Definitely hurt the Vikings.
And do we want to start this ref bash right now, or do you want to?
Sure, let's just hit it now.
We're gonna start it right now, and it's gotten pretty bad. Not just in the NFL, in college football as well. There was another one of those targeting calls in the Clemson game where the receiver took it on a punt return. He caught it, and he lowers his head like this. All right, he lowers his head like this after he catches it, And the guy coming in to make the tackle, he's lowering his level to make sure that he can hit him cleanly. Make sure he can hit him right around the chest level, right around the numbers. But the other guy, the returner, he just lowers his head, and then there ends up being helmet-to-helmet contact, and he gets called with the targeting and gets ejected.
Right, and I don't think it's right. I personally don't like the college football targeting rule for a couple of reasons, but my biggest reason is after they throw the flag, they review it to see if the player should be ejected, and the rule is that if they decide that it wasn't technically helmet to helmet or targeting, that the penalty still stands. The player can stay in the game. I don't like that. I think calls like this should be reviewed, and if it is decided that at that point it is not targeting, then the penalty should be picked up. It's just I don't like the rule. Football is just it's not becoming football anymore. I understand you got to protect players, but in the same sense, it's not like these players didn't know that there was the risk of being hurt when you go play a contact sport like football.
What I don't like about this whole targeting thing is that most of the time it is not actually targeting. It is not a vicious attempt to hit a guy on the head. It is trying to make a play in a way that they're hitting the guy in really the only way they can in the position that they're in and the time that it takes to do it. And they're just trying to make a play as fast as they can in the best way that they can. Sometimes they're in midair. And they get called with targeting and get ejected, and I don't like it.
And sort of going off that, we had a call in the Minnesota game where there was a call for a hit on a defensive player who was a receiver. And as you see, the reason this player came in and hit him was to make a tackle. The guy was coming down from catching the ball. I feel if you're a receiver and you have the ball, you are not a defensive player. You have to be tackled. That's the game.
You may not be able to see it, but I am boiling with rage, and right now my abs are clenched. I'm just trying to hold it in. You're on a football field. You're not defenseless. The only player who was ever defenseless on a football field, I've got to say, is a kick holder and a long snapper. Only two people who are actually ever truly defenseless. And everybody else, no, you're not. And especially in this one, the receiver, he caught it, and then he looked, and then there was a guy there, and he hit him. He was looking at him. He was looking at him. First of all, it was a great throw by Russell Wilson, right in between zone coverage. But you could almost exploit that to the fact that you can almost tack on 15 yards with a good throw into a coverage situation like that, because there's no other way for the defender to play that ball.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I don't like the call. It's not like it was a vicious hit. It was just blatantly to tackle the guy. He wasn't, it wasn't a late hit. It wasn't, malicious. I don't like the call. There was definitely a lot more ticky-tack calls that were many pass interference calls. It was a bad officiating day in that game, and I think definitely, even though the Vikings were already down by a good probably 14 points at this point, the fact of the matter is I think the officials definitely made sure that there was no possibility the Vikings get back in this game.
Yeah, I think at one point in this game there were 3 or 4 big penalties in a row on the Vikings on offense even. I think there was like 2 false starts and then a holding, and then they actually were able to get pretty good yards, and then they gave them another holding or a top block or something. And it was just ridiculous. And some of that is on the offense. You can't be doing false starts and stuff like that, but it was just crazy to watch. And when you see that many penalties in a row, you gotta wonder, are the refs I'm not implying here that they were going for the Seahawks because they would have won this game anyway. It was a blowout, and not just because of the officiating. But it starts to kind of bring that into question.
Yeah, and I think there needs to strictly be some evaluations on these referees game after game, and if it continues to happen, there needs to be some suspensions. There needs to be eventually maybe some firings. There's got to be a message sent from the top down saying this is not okay. I mean, these calls, you watch it. I understand it's tough. in getting time. But when you watch it on film and can blatantly see, I mean, I think if nothing else, there needs to be extra training because obviously there's an issue.
And we've seen more penalties this year than ever before. After the other Seahawks game where they batted the ball back to the end zone against Detroit, that crew or that guy, that one referee, I think it was, I don't think he got suspended, but he got moved to a less, what's the word I'm looking for, less notable game next time. He would have been in a higher profile game. He got moved down. The ACC fined a couple of their refs earlier in the season. So we're starting to move in the right direction, but we need to go farther.
Definitely. All right, so since we have put our 2 cents on officiating in football, let's go ahead and move on to some other games.
All right, so next game we're going to talk about is the Bucks and Falcons. Once again, I called it. Bucks win it 23-19. Jameis Winston had a great day. 388 yards from scrimmage, 227 were passing, and 1 touchdown and one of those interceptions that got batted up in the air. Buccaneers and Falcons both had big issues with penalties in this one. Buccaneers especially need to work on it because Doug Martin had a couple of really big runs for 20 yards, 14 yards, and they got wiped out with a holding call or something. And that's not good football. It got you a win today, but it's not going to get you a win next week. So really need to work on that.
Right. Yep. And I also picked the Bucks on this one, and it's just Winston's having a great rookie year. Showed another strong performance. I think he's definitely a good thing for the Bucks, and we'll keep turning them around.
Yeah. But one of the big reasons here, Buccaneers won the game, is that Atlanta offensive line didn't do anything. Matt Ryan was getting pressured all game, couldn't run the ball at all, and you got to remember too, Tampa Bay didn't have 2 of its leading defensive linemen in there.
True.
So there's really no excuse for that offensive line to be doing that bad.
Right.
All right. Next game we're going to recap is the Jets and Giants. I called this one as well, but by rights I shouldn't have. The Jets they won 23-20. They didn't play well. They gave up a punt return for a touchdown. They ran the ball well at the beginning, but then they got away from it. And part of that was because they started to be down and they needed to be in catch-up mode. But when they finally did go back to the run, Chris Ivory puts it on the ground, loses the fumble, and you can't do that and expect to win football games. Again, you got lucky today, but
and even with all those things though, it falls on the Giants. When a team's giving you those opportunities, not playing their best day, then that means you got to go out and play. They obviously didn't lose in this game. Some bad decisions on just play calls. And Eli had a decent game, but definitely, it's just that offense has got to put up some more points when a team's giving you the option. And they didn't do it here. Let the Jets take this one.
Yeah. We gotta bring in a question here. I know it's been all over a lot of the sports pages and stuff, where the Giants' coaching decision they could have kicked a field goal with 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter, gone up by 13. It's a pretty solid lead for a Jets offense that hasn't been doing a whole lot yet to this point. But instead, they think it's a better idea to go for the touchdown, go up by 2 possessions, and be up 17. But it backfires. And they throw an interception, which really gets the Jets going. They manage to tie it and win it in overtime.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's just something you can't do. I think at that point you just with 8 minutes left, you just got to take the points and just have some faith in your defense. But they look back at that now and maybe make a different decision down the road.
And I saw an interview with the head coach afterwards, and he was being asked about it, of course, and he said, well, we try to be aggressive, and he said, we've been aggressive all year, and it just hasn't worked out for us so far. And that's kind of true. And sometimes it doesn't work out. It is, in my opinion, usually good to be the aggressor, but you have to know when to be aggressive. And I think this is a situation where it's fairly obvious to just be conservative and take the points and move on.
Yep. All right.
All right, so just a couple more games here that really need to be talked about. The Bills and the Texans. Once again, you're right. I called this one as well. It was 30-21 for the Bills. It was a back and forth offensive show in the first half. It was, but the Bills managed to get a quick touchdown in right before halftime, go up 21-13, and then the second half, Texas come back to tie it on the Bills. The Bills missed a field goal, another special teams issue we saw today, and then they got a touchdown, or the Texans got a touchdown and got the 2-point conversion. So now it's all tied up. But then after the 2-minute warning in the fourth quarter, the Bills threw a 40-yard touchdown pass, and then after that, I mean, the defense held the Texans to a 4-and-out. At that point, you really have to go for it on fourth down, and they just came away with it. The Texans had some opportunities here again to get the win here, but they blew it on defense. They had 2 interceptions in the bag. One of them could have been a pick six, and that would have changed everything. They don't get them. They lose the game. Got to capitalize on those opportunities.
Yeah. And I have to apologize to Rex Ryan and the Bills. I chose the Texans in this one, and I sort of put out my opinion on Rex Ryan. And now eat my own words a little bit here. They ended up winning the game, and maybe Rex Ryan isn't such a wrong decision for the Bills as I thought. But I don't know. I think the Texans shot themselves in the foot here. Definitely had the opportunities and just didn't capitalize.
All right. So the Chiefs and Raiders game sounds like a game that wasn't as close as it was. The Chiefs won at 34-20. Again, I am right. I know my NFL, except for one game. Watch the show. Watch us be right. Anyway, so it was a close game really until the close quarter. It was back and forth the whole game. There was one point though where there were 3 back-to-back missed extra point opportunities with the Raiders field goal kicker Janikowski. He missed one, and then the Chiefs, when they came back and scored again to tie it up, they missed it. Again, the Chiefs scored a little later on, and it was a bad hold, so the holder picks it up and tries to just make something happen with it, makes a bad pass, and there's no 2-point conversion. So another failed one. And first of all, I'd like to say that it actually was a good decision to move the extra point back to the 33-yard line, or I forget the actual line, but for a 33-yard field goal for the extra point, I think it does make it a lot more exciting because you start to see that a lot of these teams are not as sound on special teams as we thought they were. And it's really, really interesting. It used to be last year like 99.8% of extra points were converted. And this year it's closer to 94%. And that adds a whole new dimension to the game. But you really have to be good on special teams in order to win football games. They kind of don't matter until they do, So you can always have big scoring opportunities there. You can crush a team morally with field position. And yeah, that's all I have on special teams. They're important. Okay. Chiefs kind of got away from their normal game plan here in the first half. They had 2 turnovers, both fumbles. Alex Smith has one of the records for, I think he passed Bart Starr in this game for number of passes without an interception. So congratulations, Alex Smith. But they gave away 1 touchdown off of a fumble, and luckily didn't come back to hurt them. Raiders threw 3 picks in the second half, and the Chiefs did a better job capitalizing. So props to them. All right. The next 2 games we didn't really talk about earlier on Friday, but there were some interesting things that happened.
Definitely.
First of all, the Eagles beat the Patriots. And when I read this, my first reaction was, what? I have it written here in my notes. First bullet point, what? It shouldn't happen. And even with all the injuries on the Patriots, including their offensive line, Tom Brady was under a lot of pressure in this game. It shouldn't have happened. Again, special teams was a big part of this. The Eagles blocked a punt and returned it for a touchdown. They got an 85-yard punt return for a touchdown. If you get rid of that, Patriots, you win the game. Tom Brady threw 2 picks. One of them was a pick 6. But even if you still throw those interceptions, if you clean up your special teams, you win the game.
Right. And there may be people out there who say, well, injuries for the Patriots, a lot of big players out. But, sort of in comparison, I feel like the Patriots are like the Yankees of the NFL. It shouldn't matter. You are, you're notably probably one of the best teams. You normally have the best players. You should be able to make up for that. I think after their loss against the Broncos, they were definitely frustrated. And I think that led into this game. They should not lose against the Eagles. I have, been critiquing the Eagles all year. I've been saying I think Chip Kelly just better come back to college football with all these coaching vacancies. But maybe he proves something here. I'm not. It's hard to say right now. They've still are having a subpar season. Definitely, this could maybe just be a fluke thing. But the Patriots, there's always a lot of things about the Patriots in the NFL, and you got, no matter with injuries, if you're one of the best teams in the NFL, you got to come out with this one.
Yeah. What more can you say about that? The other really you didn't think it'd be a big game, and it wasn't in terms of playoff standings. The Panthers had already clinched their division earlier with the Falcons' loss, but they just barely squeezed past the Saints, 41-38. The Saints are last in their division right now, and really, I only have one big takeaway from this, and it's that the Panthers are not invincible. The Saints did a great job here, especially at the end. It was a shootout. I think there were something like 3 or 4 touchdowns exchanged right there at the end, and the Chiefs just couldn't quite get back into field goal range before the end of it, and it's just kind of a sad loss for the Saints. If you're the Panthers, I wouldn't be super excited on your plane ride home, though. It's one that you're always happy for a win. You take a pay and get an inch or a mile wins a win, but this is one that you need to reflect on. Your defense needs to fix a couple of issues. You can't let a team score 38 points on you. Usually that's not going to be enough to get you the win. It was today because you have Cam Newton, and he is the guy that won this game for the Panthers. So many good plays in the clutch, and that's just why they won. There isn't a whole lot else to it, but they showed to me in this game that if they can play another team that's maybe a little bit better than the Saints. I don't know if the Panthers came in a little cocky and maybe didn't give it all their attention, so maybe you give them a good bad team, if that makes sense, where bad enough that they kind of overlook them, but good enough, like better than the Saints, where they can actually do something. Then maybe they lose. And
and the way I look at the Panthers this year, undefeated season so far, I think that they could have the same fate as when the Patriots made that run for their undefeated season. I think a team, even though you want that undefeated season, you want to be in the history books, I think you need to get that loss at some point, obviously before the playoffs, just to bring yourself down. I think if you go into the playoffs undefeated and eventually maybe even make it to the Super Bowl undefeated, I think you become very cocky. You think that nobody can knock you off, and then when you least expect it, somebody will knock you off. I think that may be the same thing that's going to happen to the Panthers here. I think they're great. They're a good team. Cam Newton is a great player. But I think if they don't get that loss or hopefully for them, maybe this brought some light to them. But if they, continue to go into games cocky, thinking that they're gonna win it easy because they beat everybody else, it's gonna be a rude awakening for them.
And if I remember correctly, and I may not be remembering entirely correctly, but that year with them having that big the undefeated season up until the Super Bowl, I think the Giants kind of just barely squeezed into the playoffs that year at 10. I want to say 10. I want to say 10-6, but I'm pretty sure they were 10-6 that second Super Bowl appearance, and I'm not entirely sure what their record was on that first one, but really, it's possible that they did overlook them a little bit.
Right. And especially with the NFL, even though there's the teams will stack themselves, they're all professionals playing. They've proven themselves to get to that point. You can't look over any team, and you got to go in thinking that they can beat you, and you got to prepare for that. If you come in thinking that we're going to beat them because they're not as good as us, it's going to be a rude awakening. Bad things can then happen. So, in my opinion, the Panthers better start taking some things seriously because I think they're coming in way too cocky.
All right.
All right, now we're going to cover college basketball. It was sort of interesting with the games we chose to watch this week. The Gonzaga-Arizona game definitely turned out to be a good game. Came down to be 68-63, but Arizona, in a way, pulled the upset here. In the first half, Gonzaga was up at halftime by 10 points. Looked like they were doing really good. And then in the second half, Gonzaga was outscored by Arizona by 15 points and ended up losing the game. And basically what it came down to is Arizona came out on fire. Went on 11-0 run early on to take that deficit away. And maybe Gonzaga is not the team we thought they were.
Maybe not, but I had a football coach in high school that whenever we were up big at halftime, all he would ever say was, keep your foot on the gas pedal and don't give them any hope. Those were the two things he'd always say, especially when he knew that we were better than them. Don't give them any hope. You did a pretty decent job being up by, was it 15 you said?
They were up by 10 at halftime.
10 at halftime. You're up by 10 at halftime. You're in pretty good shape. And you got to keep your foot on the gas pedal.
Yep.
Just got to keep pounding them until they just want to quit.
Yeah. And this was big for Arizona. People saying that Arizona was starting to fall. Even though they ranked 19 and only have one loss, which that loss came to Providence, who is number 23 in the country. A lot of people were talking that Arizona was showing some things that were going to go wrong. Their defense wasn't as great as people thought it was. So I think this was definitely a big statement for them, a big way to come out. And we both ended up picking Gonzaga, so it was not our best choice.
No.
So the next game we had to watch was the Arizona State-Texas A&M game, and I called this one with one of my bold picks of the week. Arizona State came out firing and ended up beating Texas A&M 67-54. They had total control over the game. At one point, Arizona was up by 25 points. They were shooting 36% from the field, made 10 three-pointers over the game. They just had A&M's number this game. And just came out firing.
Yeah, anytime you can hit 10 three-pointers, I think that's going to go a long way towards helping you get a win.
Right.
Personally, whenever I play 2K, that's always me lighting up the three-point line. So, and that's the way I do it on 2K, and it seems to have worked for ASU here today.
And Arizona State made a huge statement here. Like we said earlier in our first episode, one of their bad losses this year was to Sacramento State. And when you lose a team like that, you really put yourself at the bottom because, you don't know what to look for. But now they have wins over Creighton, North Carolina State, and Texas A&M, who was 18 in the country when they faced them. Could definitely jumpstart them in the upcoming season. But college basketball is sort of big, and there are definitely more big games to come.
There are indeed.
All right, so now we're going to recap how we did this week. So for myself, in college football, I ended up 3-2. College basketball, I ended up 1-1. In the NFL, I ended up 3-2 for a record of 7-5. But with bold picks, I was 3-1. So pretty good first week.
Very impressive.
Yes.
College football, I also went 3-2. College basketball, not a good week for me. 0-2 there. But the NFL, oh my goodness, am I great? 4-1 in the NFL. You give me a total record of 7-5. I went 1-1 for my bold picks. I know my NFL.
Yeah, so I think we definitely proved that we know our sports pretty well. So I encourage you to keep watching and looking for our picks.
Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Like and subscribe really helps the video out, gain some traction, and we know our stuff. I think we showed that 7-5 for first week, put together in 2 days. I think we did a pretty good job.
So look for episode 2 coming out Friday.